I live in a small town, so some things that happen here might not happen in bigger places. This happened about 7 years ago. I had ordered 2 desks for my sons, and my ex, their dad, had promised to come out to help them put them together. When the delivery man was scheduled to come, I let my ex know. He had taken the boys on a short walk and would be back any minute. My neighbor, who lives behind me, breeds and trains guard dogs. I love those dogs. They patrol my yard and often come to me for treats and petting. Anyway, I have a rack where my boys can put their man-sized boots. When the delivery man arrived, I asked him if he could put the desk kits inside my home. I got a weird vibe from him. I had learned long ago to never ignore my instincts. He started making small talk, and then he asked something that I knew was inappropriate. "So, do you live alone?" Instantly, my guard went up. I answered, "I wish. I have my teen sons, and they often have friends over, like every day. Plus, family members visit often, and some live next door. I swear, my place feels like a revolving door with friends, neighbors, and family constantly coming over. This quiet moment is rare. My boys and their dad will be back any minute." He got a strange look on his face, and then asked if I was seeing anyone. I became extremely uncomfortable, and my instincts were screaming danger. It was hard to keep a polite face and pretend everything was fine. He had finished putting the desk kits in my living room but wasn't leaving. I was wondering how to be firm without revealing too much. Just as I started to say something, my boys and my ex came up. The kids ran over to tell me their dad had taken them to the store and showed me what they got, before getting excited about their new desk kits. At that moment, my neighbor's dogs came over and started growling at the delivery man as he walked out. My ex-husband, who's a skilled fighter with excellent instincts, got the same vibe I did and was immediately on alert. The delivery man finally left. I was about to grab my phone to report it when my ex asked if I was going to do the same. Here's where small-town living comes in. I reported the incident to a woman known for gossip. If you need information or want to spread news, you go to her. She also happened to be a manager at the furniture store where the delivery man worked. Through her, I found out I wasn't the only woman to report or complain about him. He was fired. A few days later, a couple of older women from the community called me to ask for more details, which I gave them because I figured it was important enough for others to know. But holy cow, that was an extremely scary experience for me. When I was around 12 years old, I lived in a cabin with my family on about 5 acres of land. There was a lot of fixing up we had to do before we could live there, because squatters had taken over the abandoned property, but it was really fun working on it together as a family. When we first moved in, I loved the house. There were plenty of places to explore outside, and the things I worried about most were the spiders, snakes, and mice that sometimes found their way into our home. That was until I started seeing things. It began with occasional glimpses of something dark, thin, and tall running down the hallway out of the corner of my eye while I sat on the couch. Then it started happening more frequently. I would see the dark figure standing there or peeking at me from behind objects in my peripheral vision. Every time I turned to look, it would be gone in an instant. It did this over and over, almost as if it were taunting me. I began to feel an intense sense of dread, like something was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I especially remember the night when it was the worst. The night I fell asleep on the couch, which is what prompted me to tell you this story. After a long night of having fun and playing Minecraft, staying up way too late with my online friends, I decided to put on a movie and sleep on the sofa. After falling asleep, I woke up at a random time in the middle of the night. I instantly felt cold, afraid, and like something was seriously wrong. I couldn't shake the horrible feeling I had woken up with, so I stayed frozen on the couch in fear, hoping I could fall back asleep soon. Every ounce of my being was telling me not to move, that something wasn't right. That's when I heard it from the kitchen. Something decided to make itself known that night and growled my name, almost in an "I'm gonna getcha" kind of way. I remember feeling my blood run cold, my body tingling like static, and like all the breath had been taken out of me. I will never forget its voice. Raspy, deep, and croaky are the best ways I can describe it. I shut my eyes tight, shaking and praying that I could just go to sleep and forget everything. Honestly, I think the amount of fear I felt helped me fall back asleep quickly, almost as a coping mechanism. I was genuinely convinced I was going to die that night. The next day, when I told my parents what I had heard, we tried to bless the home and cast out whatever was there. We anointed every door in the house with oils, saged every room, and told whatever was there that it did not belong. It genuinely seemed to work. A few years later, I found out that in that very house, my father had been doing some really messed up stuff. He isn't in my life anymore, and I'm not going to get into the nasty details, but I believe he was attracting evil beings into the home with the things he was involved in. He was doing evil things, and that brought evil into our home. I had zero intention of sleeping in my car that night. I was out with some friends in downtown St. Louis, bar hopping, just enjoying the night, you know. But then I lost track of how much I'd been drinking. By the time it hit me, I was way too hammered to drive. I didn't want to blow money on a hotel or figure out an Uber back to the suburbs, so I made the dumb decision to sleep it off in my car. I ended up parking in this small, mostly empty lot near the riverfront. It seemed quiet enough. No sketchy vibes, at least at first. My car's an old sedan, not exactly built for comfort, but I tried to make the back seat work. I grabbed a ratty sweatshirt from the trunk to use as a pillow and cracked the windows just enough for air. The streetlights were flickering above, giving off this weird, eerie glow, but I was too tired and too buzzed to care. Eventually, I drifted off. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to this tapping on my window. My first thought? Great, a cop's gonna bust me for sleeping here. But nope, it wasn't a cop. I squint out the window, and there's this figure standing there, right up against the glass. The light from the street barely hit them, just enough to make out the shape of someone in a hoodie, standing way too close to my car for comfort. I tried to play it cool, thinking maybe they'd go away if I didn't react. But then they started circling the car, slowly, dragging their fingers along the glass. My heart was pounding. They stopped at the driver's side door, and I heard them try the handle. Thank God I'd locked it. Then they moved to the back window, where I was lying down, and pressed their face against the glass. I couldn't see their face clearly, just this shadowy outline of eyes staring right at me. I didn't move, barely breathed, just hoping they'd get bored and leave. After what felt like forever, they stepped back, but I didn't hear them walk away. I stayed frozen, trying to figure out if they were still there. Finally, I worked up the nerve to sit up and peek out the windshield, and there they were, standing like 10 feet in front of my car, just staring, not moving. I don't even remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly I had them, hands shaking as I started the car. The second the headlights flicked on, they bolted, running off into the darkness. I didn't stick around to see where they went. I just floored it out of there, driving until I found a busy, well-lit gas station where I stayed the rest of the night, doors locked, headlights on, wide awake. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Even now, whenever I drive past that part of town, I catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that figure again, lurking in the shadows. I need to share something truly unsettling that's been happening to me lately. About a month ago, my cousin passed away mysteriously. She was in the hospital for just one day, and the next night, around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard crying and the sound of digging graves. My room's window faces the graveyard, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. At that time, I had no idea she would be the one who was gone. I got up and went to the graveyard, only to find out she had passed away. A few days later, I was working late at night. I work remotely, and my hours are mostly late. Around 2 a.m., the lights went off. I like darkness, and my windows, which have nets, were open. Suddenly, I heard someone scratching on my window twice, like fingernails against the nets. It terrified me because no one would dare to be out there at that hour. I froze for a moment, too scared to move. Eventually, I got up, turned on the lights, and closed the windows. I thought of going to another room but decided to stay put. I closed my laptop and tried to sleep, eventually drifting off after about an hour. The next morning, I brushed it off as my imagination, and jokingly told my mom about the scratches on my window. What she told me next gave me chills. She said similar strange things were happening to other people in town. For instance, my other cousin felt someone constantly touching her, thinking it was her younger sister, only to find out she was alone. Just last night, as I was about to fall asleep, I heard my mom calling me. I went to her room, but she was sound asleep. It was around 2 a.m. again. Later, as I was half asleep, I heard my brother calling me, even though he lives in a different country. I don't know what's going on, but these experiences are becoming more frequent and more disturbing. Has anyone else experienced something similar?